reading back on like Goethe or Tolstoy and Dostoevsky, you see that one thing that great thinkers and artists have done have actually given themselves R&R time to just rest and relax. But then American society is like push, get something done, prove your value, prove your worth, get more money, get more fame, get more glory. We actually then also kind of devalue this other time, this R&R time. Welcome to the podcast, Tapping Creativity, with myself, Matthew C. Temple. And each week, we're going to dive into questions and issues and inspiration around creativity and the creative process. This week, I want to really talk about the trade-off of time, particularly as it relates to creative work. Most of us who spend time doing creative work also get down on ourselves for not doing enough of that. Or, I've been wanting to make this project for a while, or those things, that kind of clutter your brain where you're thinking, I got this idea and this idea and this idea, and someday I'll get to that. And then, someday turns into some week, some month, some year, and then God knows when it happens, if it ever happens. And it's just really necessary to look at what is, that when you're going to do creative work, you are filling that time with something that you could be doing something else with. Sometimes that other thing is just more important, right? It's just kind of that simple. And that's got to be okay. I think one of the things we need to examine is that what are we trading off when we do the creative work or when we don't do the creative work? Because here's the thing, there's only 24 hours in a day, and that's just the way that is, right? And we also live in a culture that really values this sort of like the hero's story, the one where you kind of overcome the odds to get something to happen, like the Toni Morrison, who was an editor by day and got up an hour or an hour and a half before her kid woke up in the morning to write. And we look at that and we think, that's amazing that she gave something up. She traded in sleep for writing work. And that's really exciting. On the flip side of it, though, is that that's actually not something that we can all do, and it's not something we can all do all of the time, that's for sure. So the thing that then kind of becomes what we can look at is when I'm trading in time for something that's actually valuable and important to the flow of my life or not. So if I'm going to sit down and write today for an hour and a half, which I'm going to do shortly after I'm done recording this, there's something else that I could have been doing. And what is that something? It could be, I've got to deal with some medical insurance stuff, for example. That's not going to happen. I'm going to give that up. I don't have any little kids at home right now. So I don't have to worry about making lunches. So those aren't things that I'm giving up, but there's always something I'm giving up. And so I just think it's also really important if you're on a creative journey, particularly if you're not making a living as a creative, then when you are spending your time creating, there's probably something else that you could be doing that's quote unquote more valuable or more urgent or more important to the flow of your life. But then ultimately, this creative time needs to be imbued with that importance so that you can actually make the time to do it, so that you can find the time and trade that in. I think almost all of us spend more time than we need to, say, on some semblance of social media or reading the news or reading politics or reading the sports page or watching a baseball game or whatever. And those things are all super important and valuable in life. But if you're wanting to create and you're not, what are you trading your creative time for, right? Because you're trading it for something. I think because we live in this world that really kind of values certain types of success over other types, it can be easy to say making a nice dinner is less valuable than writing a book. And I just don't know that that's necessarily the case. It becomes, in some ways for us, the case when we're not aware and conscious of that if I'm going to make a really nice dinner tonight and it's going to take me a couple hours to prep it and do it, that I'm still trading that time, and I could be working on whatever this creative project is that I want to do. I could be working on my book, I could be doing whatever. When I'm conscious of that trade-off, then it doesn't nag at me. I can just really be aware. Is this a trade-off I want to make today? Is this what I want to give my time to? Right? And then because this too, we have this like our very much our modern society, very much American society is like push, 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 get something done, prove your value, prove your worth, get more money, get more fame, get more glory, finish more things, have more stuff to show for your time, for your efforts or whatever that is. We actually then also kind of devalue this other time, this R&R time. And, you know, one of the things that I love actually about reading back on, like, you know, the great Russian novels or, you know, German novels, Goethe, or, you know, you go into Russia and there's Tolstoy and Dostoevsky. And, you know, a lot of the people that created in Europe, really from, you know, the Renaissance all the way, you know, even through, you know, Enlightenment and whatever, was, you know, the people who had time to create and spend time creating had some sort of sponsorship, or they were from wealthy families. So they didn't have to wash dishes. They didn't have to go out and farm. They didn't have to do these things, but they still had a lot of duties. And then you kind of like read a lot of these biographies and stuff, and you see that one thing that great thinkers and artists have done have actually given themselves R&R time to just rest and relax. In our modern society, we've kind of taken that away from us. We can always fill our time, and some of it's conscious stuff, some of it's, and so much of it though is just unconscious stuff that takes our time, you know, interrupted with emails, text messages, all these places where people are messaging me and I have to get back to, and then there's all this stuff that just kind of takes up my time. And that time is, I've got to really be aware when I'm investing my time in messaging and all of these other things, that's also taking my time away from me. So I think that it's just really important to begin to be aware of what are we trading off and allowing it to be okay when it's something that we value, or when it's something that I don't want to say have to do, but that is part of the things that we choose to do in order to live the life we want to live. You know, we wanted to have a kid, that means you got to feed the kid. It means you got to wash their clothes, and it means you got to, you know, stay up with them all night when they're sick or whatever it is. Those are the choices, and then we actually have the opportunity to step up and do those things. So there's some things that we're just going to do anyways, and I recognize I have a little kid or I've got a very demanding job. That is going to take some of my time. But then to really just bring awareness to when I'm trading it off, and is it something that I actually want to be trading for my creative time? Is Facebook what I want to exchange for my creative time? Is watching Netflix what I want to exchange for my creative time? That's not to say Netflix isn't great. Netflix is wonderful. It's really important to have time to say, you know, just want to either veg out, or like I want to see what other creatives are doing. I want to see how other people are telling stories. Super valuable, but you got to be really, really aware and conscious of that trade-off. So take an examination over this next week, looking at what are you trading off, and is it a trade-off that you actually want to be making? And if it's not, to begin to make the changes in order to adjust how your trade-offs are working out in your life. Trade-offs, that's the idea to hold this week, and let's see what we can, you know, clear from our plate and bring consciousness around so we can spend a little bit more time doing our creative work. If you have any thoughts on the episode, make sure you reach out in any of the sections below. And as always, questions, thoughts, concerns, or just want to say hi, reach out. You know where to find me at Matthew C. Temple, and my website, MatthewCTemple.com. Have a great and creative week, y'all.